Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Tactile Knife Co. and Bob Terzuola Mariner 2. The original, of course, being from, I think, 1987 is what it said on their website. So this is a pretty cool collaboration. They did scale this down, apparently to comply with sub 3-inch knife laws, but a super classic knife and 100% American made. I actually ended up enjoying this substantially more than I thought I would. You'll have to excuse me. I am fighting a little bit of a head cold, so I'm going to be quieter than usual, but we're fine. So we'll get through it. Thanks so much to Tactile Knife Co. for sending this in. I will link down in the description where you can pick this up for yourself. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this knife. Not a tiny knife, but far from a large knife. The overall length coming in at about 7 1/8. Blade length is coming in right there at 3 inches. So I think most of the time you'll be okay, but in a situation where somebody does not want this to be under 3 inches, it can very easily be called 3 inches. So be careful about that. It's right on the line. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. Up against the 8010 and the 8020.5. You can see here that this is definitely a smaller and more compact knife design. Even smaller than something like the 8020.5. Nowhere near the size of the 8010. Let's put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. Definitely closer to the size of the Para 3. It does still have a little bit more cutting edge, though. It's just, obviously the overall profile is much different. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. How's the action on this knife? It utilizes a thumb disc. Some people love them and some people hate them. I used to hate them. Absolutely hate them. And I keep saying over and over again, I probably just had a really bad experience with some improperly placed thumb discs, because pretty much every single modern design that I've handled that has a thumb disc, I really like it. The detent is on the lighter side, but it's tuned perfectly to be able to manipulate this with absolute ease. It also feels incredibly luxurious. This is running on caged ceramic bearings, and you can tell. I mean, listen, this is a simple design, right? There's nothing here that we haven't seen before, right? We have a flat, very classic knife handle profile. We have an incredibly traditional blade shape. We have a liner lock, right? A thumb disc. But this is all intentional because it was designed on something that Bob Terzuola came out with in the late 80s. And they did a really, really good job. But it's just beautifully executed, right? I mean, it's something from the past that has modern elements implemented, but all of those little tiny luxuries that we expect from our pocket knives, especially in this category, because this guy is pricey, they're all there. I mean, this is beautifully smooth, which is wonderful considering how light and small the blade is, but it's still controlled. I don't feel like any part of this knife is uncomfortable or I have to adjust my hand in order to accommodate for something, even with this being on the smaller side. It honestly just, it's really good. I can see why designs like this sort of stand the test of time. Definitely. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. This is not a thick knife. It's actually a little thinner than something like the Para 3. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. This is where this thing really shines. It is incredibly compact without being small and or lightweight enough to disappear so completely in the pocket that you forget that it's there, which is not something that everybody is bothered by, but it is something that bothers me, which is why I don't carry micro knives or ultra lightweight knives. I will forget that they are there. So I like when knives, especially if I need them to be compact, I really like it when they're compact. You're still maximizing the amount of usable edge that you're carrying, but there's enough heft and solidity there that you're reminded that, hey, you still have this tool in your pocket at the end of the day, right? But this carries so compact. I really, really enjoyed carrying this, and truthfully, this will probably continuously make it into my rotation. If I didn't mention, I am going to be keeping this one. I don't keep everything that's sent to me. I kind of pick and choose here and there, and I've gotten really, really particular. I'm kind of spoiling the review here, aren't I? But yeah, spoiler alert, I'm going to keep this one. I really like, this is such a great size to carry in so many different situations, whether I'm just going about my day or I'm going to dinner with my wife. It just works. So you can see here, with the Para 3 being one of my most carried knives of all time, it kind of why I enjoyed this one so much. Let's go ahead and do weight, but first, what are we looking at for materials? In this case, we're looking at titanium. We are looking at MagnaCut that's been hardened to 63 to 64 Rockwell. Ask 100 people in the community whether or not they would consider that to be ideal for MagnaCut, and 99 of them will answer yes. I don't know what that last guy's doing. Reprioritize your life, last guy. I'm just kidding. I'm still trying to work jokes in while I sound like I'm dying. I'm not dying. I just I had the head pressure from that cold front came in, and everybody just became sick all at the same time. So anyways, we have titanium and we have MagnaCut. Beautiful. This is such a wonderful blade profile for MagnaCut to be 63 to 64. It is such a perfect pocket knife blade that's meant for pocket knife tasks, right? Just beautiful. Titanium with a really nice smooth, I don't know if they blast it and then smooth it out somehow. It's not chalky. It's really, really nice. And then I opted for a superconductor disc. You can get a regular disc, or you can pay $30. Most of the discs are $30 to $40, right? If you want zirconium, you want Damascus, or whatever. And then I think the superconductor is like $60. Understandably, superconductor is a really expensive material, and I don't know how it found its way into the knife world, but I wish we'd see more of it. But yeah, I opted for the superconductor because I think it's just a really nice accent up there. It looks really, really good. So yeah, for the most part though, titanium with a titanium spacer, a titanium pocket clip, and MagnaCut. The inside of the scales are absolutely milled out to reduce weight. Let's go ahead and, well, actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's make sure that the lock bar is in fact steel, which it is. It does have a steel lock bar. A lot of people, I think, we're kind of hoping to see a titanium lock bar with a steel lock bar insert, which is overkill. The whole goal is just to have a steel on steel contact. I'm always impressed when companies do that, but I don't require it in order to be a part of the total value or anything like that. I just think it's really, really neat. The weight on this guy is coming in, whoops, we have to change that to, there we go. So the weight is coming in at 3.6 ounces, which is just about 3 ounces, anything below 3 ounces, and I start to be demotivated to carry it because it gets too lightweight for me. So this is, I'm really happy with this. Obviously it's slightly butt heavy. We are going to be back here just a bit, but it's still only a 3.6 ounce object, so the balance really isn't going to bother most people, especially considering how compact it is, right? But 3.6 ounces of weight for 3 inches of blade, or as they would probably measure, 2.98 inches of blade. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's pretty darn good. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. This is almost certainly T8 across the board. So we have a T8 adjustment head. We have 3 T8 screws on the body. And these go all the way through, which means you only have 3 screws total. I actually really like this. I don't mind how this looks at all. I don't mind the screws threading into the titanium. I think that this is, you're less likely to lose a screw, and there are less screws or less steps involved with this assembly. Also, because this is a simple sandwich construction liner lock with bearings, your disassembly process is incredibly easy. With all these screws being T8, I'm guessing the hidden screw underneath holding the pocket clip in is also T8. It's just really simple, right? As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. But yeah, just there's no reason to overcomplicate this stuff. So I'm glad that they didn't. Really, really nice. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness on this knife. I'm going to guess that's probably 115 to 120 thousandths. Let's take a look. So your blade stock thickness is coming in at, oh, it's much thinner. Much thinner. Okay. All right, meat and potatoes time. This is such a classic knife. You know, you look at this, so many people will look at this and say, that looks like the this or that looks like the that. I'll repeat the date that this knife was designed in by Bob Terzuola is 1987. So if you think it looks like something, there are likely hundreds of knives that you're unaware of that look like this. I'm not saying Bob Terzuola invented this blade shape or this handle profile, but the Terzuola look is pretty, like if you see the ATCF, is it ACTF or ATCF? I think it's ATCF. I can never remember. But this guy literally wrote the book on tactical knives. I mean, I think that's actually a pretty rare and valuable book called The Tactical Folding Knife by Bob Terzuola. Can't remember if that was written in the 80s or the 90s. But yeah, literally wrote the book on it. So this is a legendary figure in the knife community, and he makes very practical stuff. He also makes very tactical stuff, which is just conveniently rhymes and kind of flows. I need all the help I can get today. Oh my gosh. But yeah, a lot of people would describe this as boring, you know, and especially when they look up the price tag, people are going to get real offended because as knives get more expensive, you know, depending on who you are, you want it to look more expensive, right? And obviously that's very subjective because it comes down to your own personal tastes. But when we talk about what factually is making it cost so much, it's I'm making a big deal out of it, but it's no secret unless you don't know. This is made in the United States. But Kershaw makes knives in the United States, and Spyderco makes knives in the United States. They don't get that expensive. Yeah, it's not the same thing. If you didn't know, the reason that some of those knives cost less, number one, of course, the materials, but number two, not every last element of those knives is made in the United States. Most of it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not coming down on Kershaw or some of those other companies, right? But not everything. So that's part of the reason. Number two, the materials, sometimes the materials are different, right? Obviously, things like aluminum and G10 and micarta are going to cost a little less than titanium, actually quite a bit less. And then also, MagnaCut is very expensive. I mean, that's one of the most expensive single compositions that you can get. Now, take all of that stuff and again, make them small batch, by the way, not mass produced, right? We can't sit here and say Tactile Knife Co. can produce as many knives as Kershaw because that's a hilarious joke that's incorrect. No. So this is also, whether or not you want it to be a part of the equation, it factually is. Small batch, all USA. There might be something like the bearings or something, right? But all USA, right? You factor in the labor costs, right? The costs get exponential. Now, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But the price is the price. I mean, that is going to be expensive. And people find out, you know, I think that every now and then you get somebody who decides to go on this venture and try to make their own knives, try to machine their own knives, and they figured out, oh, crap, this really is incredibly expensive to do in the United States, right? We live in a time period in the knife world where you have a bajillion choices. So, you know, if something like this is not to your liking, specifically because of the price tag, you've got way too many options to be upset about it. But for people looking for that USA, you know, lightweight, compact, classic, right, EDC pocket knife that has history, right? This is there. I think people who are interested in this know exactly what they're buying. And I think Tactile Knife Co. knows exactly who they're marketing this towards, right? But for what it is, they really did a fantastic job. Everything feels great. The detent feels great. Nothing feels sloppy. It's very easy to engage with. You're going to have a little bit of the cutting path eaten up by the placement of this disc. And the downside to a disc is it can get hung up. Right? But this is classic Terzuola. That's what he did, right? I mean, we see these thumb discs on his knives. And it does work. For what I'm going to use it for, right? I'm probably not going to, this probably isn't going to be my number one choice for like taking out and like processing heavy materials for long periods of time. No, but little cuts here and there, opening packages, right? Just getting out to look at. It just looks so nice. And it also, this is the type of knife that kind of complements, you know, if you're going out and you're gonna, you know, you're trying to look nice, right? You got your nice watch on. Maybe you're carrying a nicer pen, right? And it's not that like you're expecting people to notice that you have accessorized or matched all of your stuff. That's for you, right? But this is the kind of knife that will literally go with anything. I remember putting this in my pocket and I was like, man, like this is such a classic pocket knife look. It just looks good with everything and it's appropriate in pretty much any attire, right? Might be a little bit too big for fitted pants, but then again, maybe not, right? I mean, a couple of times I took this out to eat with me and it just felt very, very natural. On top of that, it's also very, very comfortable because the handle profile is like time tested. It's just the most standard handle profile. And the edges are supremely knocked down. There's no sharp edge on this knife anywhere except for the cutting edge, which is the only edge that should be sharp. Now, there's nothing really locking you in. It is definitely slippery and there is essentially no guard running up to the edge. So you've got a little bit of curvature here. I mean, there's enough to where you, as long as you're slightly cognizant of it, you're probably not going to run your finger up on the edge, but also you could. It's slippery, right? It would be neat to see versions of this with a little bit of texturing, but I think that pulls away from the whole idea, which is to model it after the original, and the original was smooth. I actually don't know if the original was titanium. It looks like it was. The original was also larger, which I'm going to say right now, and I'm sure, 16 minutes in, I'm sure it's already been sent a bunch in the comment section, but I would love to see them do a larger one, but not as thin as the original. The original was longer but thinner. I'd like to see them do pretty much this exactly, but up to about 8 inches or even 8 1/4. I think that would be really cool. But I also like this. I mean, I can still get a full grip on it. I can choke back and still feel pretty good. There's no position that feels uncomfortable. The pocket clip has a little bit of a bill, but not much. It's below the 50% line for the handle, so it feels good. Everything looks good. Fit and finish is good. The cutting bevel, let's take a look here. My eyes keep telling me that it's uneven. I think it's just maybe back here it starts to get slightly thinner, but honestly, it looks pretty darn good everywhere else. Cutting geometry, it's actually pretty thin. You don't have an incredibly thick blade stock to begin with. You have a little bit of a flat, right? But yeah, the edges, I mean, it just feels like pretty standard. It doesn't feel overly thin. It definitely doesn't feel thick. It's nice and bitey, right? It'll cut. It'll do what you need it to do. This is a blade shape that's going to be good at a lot of different things. It doesn't have much of a tip, right? This is to imitate the classic. A lot of people don't like this. They really want a tip on their knife. Personally, I don't need it that much. I do a lot more cutting than I do poking, so that's fine. But that's going to come down to personal preference. Preference. Everything about the wording is very, it's very classy. Like the font and the placement of Tactile and MagnaCut, like underneath the cap, is really nice. There's no big branding. Even Terzuola, like they just didn't really, there's nothing there except for on the pocket clip, right? I really like that. It lends to the look and this kind of, it's like I was saying, like the knife really accessorizes well with a lot of stuff because it just looks so classic, right? I like that they didn't plaster the blade with a bunch of crap. I'm also glad they didn't put Terzuola's logo like really big on the blade. I like that. I also like that they gave us the option to change out the thumb disc with different materials so that you can kind of pick what you like. I think the look between the dark gray and the stonewashed finish, which is done really well, by the way, I think that looks really good, especially in contrast with the superconductor. Everything else, a lot of times I say, I wish they would spice it up and add some character with texturing or a different backspace or this or that. But I keep reminding myself with this is based on something that was designed a long time ago. They didn't want to do it. They didn't want to change it up, right? So it looks good. And I think they've accomplished this really, really well. It has that minimalist look. A lot of people would say that this is minimalist with personality, and a lot of people would say it's minimalist and it's boring. Even if it is, great, it's based on an older design, it's still boring. That's fine. You can have your opinion. But I think a lot of people would say If this knife came out and it wasn't a Terzuola and it was designed by somebody else, you would call it simple and boring, and you would say, "Oh, it's a good knife. It's fine, but it's just kind of boring. Like we've got a million of these." And to those people, I would say, "Yeah, you're right." But the fact of the matter is, with this knife, it is based on something that came out a long time ago, and then what we've done is we've had a company named Tactile Knife Co. Bring it up to date, give it some modern materials and a little bit of a modern look and feel and quality, right? So yeah, in a lot of ways, it definitely is boring. I agree with those people, but I mean, it's not like that. Their goal wasn't to take an old design and completely change it. Their goal was to just bring it back to life. So yeah, it's cool. Either way, though, I would still say the same. I think the design is good. It's a classic design. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not going to be like, oh my gosh, it's the most spectacular thing in the whole world. You're not going to be able to live without it. It's a revolution in ergonomics. No, I'm not going to say anything like that. No, it's just a good classic pocket knife design, and I really like the combination of Tactile and Terzuola here. It is a bummer that they could not find a way to mount make it so that the pocket clip could mount for lefties. I still think a wraparound and slot system is a good idea. Then again, if they did that, unless you could find a way to accommodate this handle screw, which that's probably the way to do that, right? Because the screw's going to be there either way. And if you slot it into the titanium frame, you only need one screw because it's already caged in place, right? It's captive. So using the handle screw to accommodate, it moves back a little bit, so what? If you look at the placement, the pocket clip placement of the original, I think it was in a similar spot. That would have been a good way to accommodate for lefties. They didn't do that. So lefties, this is a right-handed pocket knife. You want to pick it up, you got to carry it in a right-handed pocket. I know lots of lefties are used to that. So there you go. A benefit of the scales being smooth is that the pocket clip slips if you put it in your pocket, it's going to be very easy to push it in and pull it out because you're not working against texturing or any unnecessary friction. So that is nice. We have a stop pin that's located back here. There is no shouldering. You can see right there where it connects on the blade. Your lockup is completely and totally solid. This is a standard, like a basic nested liner lock. So this is not a locking system that is expected to be incredibly durable. Lots of people, I think, assume that as knife prices go up, the knife should become more durable, the equivalent of the price tag, which is an impossible thing to measure, but it also doesn't always make sense, right? If you want a super duper durable locking system, go buy a knife from Cold Steel. They make the Triad lock, and they make enough choices that you shouldn't, you're not going to have to worry about it. This is a liner lock. The idea of a liner lock is ease of manipulation, disengagement, and then enough of a reliable lockup to get the blade to lock out so that it stays locked out while you use it like a knife. If you pound on the back of this, it's probably going to disengage. Most liner locks will. Even the really, really good ones, right? But this isn't a normal knife task is doing this, right? So Tactile's done a good enough job that it'll stay with a couple of light taps. That's all that I require. If you require more, then you can buy this and test it yourself. That's fine. But the liner lock is good enough to do exactly what it was meant to do, which is just hold the blade in place while you use it for simple knife tasks. Your blade has no blade play up, down, left, or right. There is no lock stick. There's no pivot lash. It's very smooth and consistent in here. Like I said, a good detent on the lighter side, but it should be considering how you deploy the knife. The base price of this knife is $429. I think it's $429, so $430, right? If you are familiar with all USA manufacturing, small batch, right? If you're familiar with this tier, it's going to make sense to you. I think even some of those people are going to have a harder time accepting that considering the size of the knife. I get that. I think your brain probably works like mine where I'm like, but it's on the smaller side. Like, why is it so much? And then we remember that the size is not, the huge contributing factor when it comes to the price tag. If you're newer, that price tag's not going to make any sense, probably because your radar for what things cost is just way off. a lot of people, they have some of their favorite brands that they probably have always assumed were made in the United States, and they dig into it and realize, oh, your favorite brand and your favorite model or whatever is way less expensive, not only because it's not made with the same materials, but also because it's made in China or somewhere else, right? Which is fine, but that's a huge part of it. So this isn't going to be a knife that a bajillion people are just going to rush out and want to buy. But I gotta tell you guys, I really like this one. This is such a classy, cool pocket knife. And maybe I'm just, like, oh, it's a Terzuola. I just like it because it's a Terzuola, right? Maybe so. It's cool. Like, Terzuola knives are cool. It's just a cool name, right? USA, it's got MagnaCut on it. MagnaCut's expensive by itself, and then we've got it heat treated properly. Classy looking knife. I can't sit here and say that I'm upset with the price tag. And maybe I'm just, biased, I don't know. But I like this knife, and I think anybody who picks it up will also like it, as long as they understand what they're getting here. It's intentionally designed after something that was made a long time ago. And if you like this look and you're big on, Terzuola, you're big on USA stuff, right? You want all your premium materials, you're going to love this. But if you're not that person, probably not. Still, though, I think it is good for the class of knife that it's in. I also think it's a really great size for a wide range of people. I think it's a really good general tool. Definitely not a hard use tool, but a really good tool, a very well-made tool. For all of those reasons, it's rare that I put a knife that's so expensive in my recommended knives playlist, but I'm going to. I do recommend this knife. I think this is really, really neat. I'll link it down in the description. You guys can check it out if you want to, but I really like this one. And like I said, I'm going to keep it. The Mariner 2 is definitely a nice knife, and definitely one that will make it back into my own personal rotation. That's going to be it today, guys. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at _metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.